All right.
So, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming along to the third of our Humanity and Technology session. It's delightful to be here with you and to welcome David Wortley, our keynote, and I'll be talking a little bit about him in just a moment, and also to Dr. Anthony Basil, who's our researcher here looking at simulation with us. So, David, I'm going to do your bibliography much more on the lovely book that you shared with us recently, because David's done so much, it's really difficult to try and sort of confine it, but he's the author of Gadgets to God, which is a historical perspective of looking at our changing relationship over 60 years with technology and looking at disruptive communication technologies on business and society. And kind of in between our two last webinars, ChatGPT has just suddenly launched off. And so Dave knows lots about things like that. He's a consultant on the strategic use of immersive and emerging technologies. He ran the Serious Gaming Lab Institute up at Coventry University. He looked at designing immersive technologies in the curriculum. He's looking at things that's like commerce, climate change. So loads of different things that David's done and offered all around tech. But today we're particularly looking at aging, technology, health innovations. Do put questions in the chat either as we go, or there'll be lots of time for chat and questions later on. David, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, because I have so many slides this time, I better start sharing my screen straight away. I'll begin as I've done before. By just giving you a little guided tour to where I am at the moment. Well, I'm at home, actually, in my home office, but I'm also in this virtual auditorium. And what it allows me to do is to just show different views of my presentation. So I'm just going to give you a quick guided tour, just a few. You see there's nobody in the auditorium here watching me today. There have been on previous occasions. And if you're that way inclined, you can also see a zoomed up picture of me. But because as I said, because I've got so many slides to go through, I'm going to focus on making my presentation full screen and get straight into it. I'm David Wortley. I'm a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts and Commerce, and I'm a vice president of the International Society for Digital Medicine, amongst other things. And today I want to talk about technology and humanity in the aging society. And I'm grateful to Bournemouth University for giving me the opportunity to make this series of presentations. Debbie mentioned my book, Gadgets to God. This is not meant to be a plug, and Debbie's in no way responsible for mentioning it in my introduction. I didn't prompt her to do that. But I'm showing this slide really because parts of this presentation may be quite controversial to some people, and I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that the views and opinions expressed in this presentation are entirely my own, and they're based on my experience with and passion for how technology has changed business society in my lifetime. And they're not intended to be representative of Bournemouth University or any other organisation I'm associated with. So if any of my views, and I don't think they will, but just in case they do, if any of my views offend or unpleasant for any of the viewers, I do apologise in advance because it's unintentional. I want to begin by giving a quote from Charles Dickens, which I think is very appropriate for today's times. This is from the book Tale of Two Cities. And what Charles Dickens said right at the beginning of the book was that it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was a season of light, it was a season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, It was the winter of despair. And it very much seems like the same thing applies to today. So my approach to today's presentation is to do it in two distinct halves. I'm going to begin by talking about technology and humanity in general. And then I'm going to move on to the challenges of the aging society and how they relate to the use of technology in healthcare, the role of healthcare professionals, etc., in tackling some of these challenges. So the first part, it's not a history lesson, but it's a stroll through how technology has evolved during the span of man's period on Earth. So it began with human beings, cave dwellers, and the first technologies were tools which allowed them to hunt and allowed them to make fires and so on. And in those days, men and women were very different. Men were the hunters, women were the gatherers. And I think that's important to understand for the way that society has evolved since then. After many years after that, when the Greeks and other forms of civilization, the Romans were one of the first civilizations to use communications technology to expand their empire. So Roman roads and communications technology played a big role in advancing or changing the world in which everyone lived. There was a period after the Roman Empire disintegrated when there weren't too many technological advances, but then the printing press and Gutenberg was one of the next major advances in communication technology. And for the first time, it was possible to produce many copies of the printed word, which could be used to communicate and educate other people. Then we come to the first industrial revolution and the age of steam. And this had the effect of making it possible for people to travel much more easily from place to place, and also transfer goods and services from place to place. Then at the end of the 19th century, we had Marconi and the invention of radio, and there was another quantum leap in communications technology until 1949, and many developments in between, cinema, television, and all the other things. But in 1949, this is an example of one of the very earliest computers, the Ferranti Mark I. So the point I'm trying to make here is that every quantum advance in communications technology has disrupted business and society. And each advance has increased our interaction between each other. It's generated commerce and wealth. It's affected the quality of life and health, and created opportunities and challenges. I just want to briefly tell you a couple of quick stories about two people, both related to the town of Market Harborough, where I was living during the end of the last century and the first part of this century. These people were individuals who recognized the power of technology, and they had a passion to make the world a better place through the use of technology. And the first of these was Thomas Cook, who in the 1830s and 1840s, he was a cabinet maker. He was living in Market Harborough, and he had a transformational experience one day. He was walking between Market Harborough and Leicester, about 15 miles journey, to a temperance meeting. He was a man who was passionate about the evils of alcohol. And he stopped for a rest about halfway in between, and he had this blinding vision about how he could harness the power of technology, which was steam power and the railways in those days, to the benefit of mankind. And his vision for starting up his travel company, which is still in existence and is still a well-known name in global travel, he started his travel company up because he believed that if he made it possible for ordinary people to be able to travel to new places and have new experiences, it would make them lose interest in alcohol. And that was his motivation, and that was how he set up a global travel empire. He was the inventor of travelers' checks, but he was a social entrepreneur. And he transformed the life of the 1800s through his use and application of technology. Fast forward to 1998, and you will almost certainly not have heard of Frank Bingley unless you've listened to any of my previous presentations. Frank Bingley was an individual who also was living in Market Harborough. And I came across Frank because I'd secured money for a government project called Community Commerce and Knowledge Network, which was about how to use technology to increase transfer of knowledge and trade within a physical community, because a lot of towns and villages, like the ones where I live, were affected by globalization, and people were buying goods and services from outside when they could get those same goods and services from within the town. And I came across Frank because I do a bit of desk research, and I wanted to find out how many people were using the internet in my area, because this was all about using the internet in a similar way to Facebook and LinkedIn. And I came across a website called Big Fern. And to my horror, I discovered that someone had already developed some of the tools that I'd received or were about to receive a significant amount of government money to develop. Somebody beat me to it. And what was worse was that they were better at designing websites than my company was. So I had a moral dilemma. Do I try and involve this person or this company in working with me? I decided that the world was big enough for both of us. So I sent an email to the webmaster, and it happened to be Frank Bingley. And I said, I've got some money for a project. Would you like to come and talk to me about it? Because you've got some great ideas I'd like to share. And as he walked into my office, I said to him, I'm sure I know your face from somewhere. How do I know you? And he said, of course you know me. I'm your milkman. And this was my milkman in his spare time as a hobby, who'd done about 50% of what I just got some government money to do. And he was an uneducated, well, not to the same extent as I was, milkman. But he was empowered by technology and his passion to want to do something for his community. So he built this website, which had got a lot of information about history and connected businesses together. So these two people made me realize the power of today's technology to change the world that we live in. So I want to quickly just mention the first industrial revolution, because in the time of Thomas Cook, with steam power, this had a tremendous impact on society, because people who'd developed their whole life, developed the skills throughout their whole life, particularly weavers, were suddenly out of work because of machines and because of technology. And so there was a tremendous rebellion led by a guy called Ludd, which spawned the term Luddites. And it took a military action, it took imprisonment, and in some cases hanging, to stop people advancing technology. And I put this up because this was about technology replacing human skills and livelihoods that have been acquired over a lifetime. So going fast forward again to 1948-49, I was born in 1949. I'd say this is the world that I was born into. And it was a year after the NHS was actually born. You can see the Ferranti Mark I computer there, which probably had equivalent of about 1K of memory. In those days, everything was about academic education. You needed to go to university to be successful in life. at that time also people tended to live and die, get married, all in the same community. They very rarely moved out of their own community. This was an age of careers for life. People stayed in the same job and for the rest of their lives. And it was an age in which, going back to the hunters and gatherers, men were still breadwinners and women were homemakers. So there was still that same delineation between males and females in their roles in society. When I was born, very, very few, well, there were no televisions to speak of, no phones, we had no phone, we didn't have a car either. And that was true for the majority of most people. And in those days, life expectancy for men was around about 66, and women, it was for 71 was the life expectancy. But since then, we've been through the third, and we're going now into the fourth industrial revolution. The third industrial revolution was really about computers, beginning with the early days of the old computer terminals, evolving to personal computers, the IBM desktop, other computers like the Amstrad computers, and these are devices that I've used at various times throughout my years. And in the 1990s, we saw the emergence of the precursors of smartphones. These were called PDAs, personal digital assistants. And from 2000 onwards, we had Web 2.0, we had social media with Facebook, we've now got smartphones, and now we're moving into the era of artificial intelligence. And just to put some sort of context on this, what we've seen in that time is really an exponential growth in digital data. And it's worth reflecting that your smartphones have probably got more memory on your smartphones than existed in the whole world in the 1970s. So we're only talking about 50 years ago. And in that time, we've had an exponential growth in the amount of data and the sophistication of the technologies that we use that have empowered individuals in an unaffected business and society. And in this situation, we have winners and losers in the fourth industrial revolution. And I put a list of professions or pictures representing various professions. And I'm actually doing a presentation in August at an international conference, so I'm going to talk about this in detail and reflect on how the latest technologies have totally transformed the career prospects and the income prospects for a wide variety of different professions and trades. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So going on now to 2023, we've gone from a situation where the NHS was born in 1948 to a situation where the NHS really in many ways is not that different from the principles that behind its birth, but now it's in crisis. We have far more sophisticated computing tools than existed. Well, they didn't exist in 1949. We've gone from a situation where academic education, universities is key to success, to a situation where now I believe it's actually apprenticeships and training which develops human skills. There's going to be key to success rather than academic achievement. People now don't live in the same community for the whole of their lives. People don't have the same job for the whole of their lives. There are multiple careers and different kinds of jobs. Men and women are becoming less and less differentiated, not just in some of the gender reassignment and some of the issues that are in the news today, but men and women roles are interchanging ways they've never done before in history. And of course, almost everyone has access to technology in the form of smartphones and travel, and life expectancy has gone up. Male life expectancy at the moment is around about 81 years, and for females, it's 84 years. So it's a really major change in the space of a human's lifetime. So the conclusions that I reach from this is that, you know, developments in technology since my time, when I was born, of course, the biggest change to every aspect of human life. And that this pace of change is accelerating, and it's very unpredictable. And I think it represents, especially AI, the greatest challenge to mankind. Society, we can see, is becoming increasingly polarized in many different ways. And I believe the aging society is one of the biggest challenges. So that's what I'm going to move on to now, and talk in some detail about the challenges of the aging society, and how these might be addressed by lifestyle medicine, and different kinds of technologies that influence our behaviors. So to begin with, I want to show a chart which is fairly current, and despite the impact of COVID on the whole of global health, today it's non-communicable and lifestyle-related disease that are the greatest cause of mortality. And these are, in a way, preventable because they are based largely on lifestyle behaviors. And just as an example, one of the challenges that older people face, this is my it's my partner's late father, who lived with us for the last year of his life. He died in 2021 after spending 12 months living with us, being cared for by us. And you can see his daily drug regime when he came to us, all of these drugs on the left-hand side of the table. And so it was my partner Jackie's responsibility to make sure that he took these drugs at the right time. So this was what was keeping Eric alive, not inconsiderable cost. And as he became obvious that he was not going to be with us for very long, the daily drug regime changed quite substantially. So it's our reliance on drugs and pharmaceutical solutions that is not only a major cause of cost, but it's also a major cause of problems with the aging society. And the answer to this, according to Sir Simon Stevens, who is the former head of the NHS, is that we need to make this transition from thinking about medicine as cure to prevention, and making behavioral changes in lifestyles. So the best chance we have of increasing our lifespans further and improving the quality of life in older age is to change our personal behaviors, and to do it as early as possible. So how can technology solve this problem? It's a challenge of influencing lifestyle behaviors and circumstances at an individual level, but also at scale. I only came across the British Society for Lifestyle Medicine just something over a year ago, and I wasn't aware that what I'd been doing with wearable technologies and changing my lifestyle was basically match the fundamentals of lifestyle medicine, which is described as evidence-based clinical care that supports behavior change with person-centered techniques to improve mental well-being, social connection, healthy eating, and so on. And the three principles of lifestyle medicine is that we need to acknowledge, we need to do something about the socio-economic determinants of health. We need to develop proven techniques to support people with lifestyle changes, and this is about human-to-human relationships. And we need to create an understanding and action-based understanding of the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, which are healthy eating, mental well-being, healthy relationships, physical activity, minimizing harmful substances, and sleep. All of these have an influence on our health. And these are the things that I've been trying to manage myself through the use of technology over the last decade. So I've used technologies to manage my diet, my exercise, hydration, my sleep, my mindfulness and stress management. and also some of the tools that provide social support. And the role of technology in all of this, and we're talking now about not expensive or proprietary technologies, we're talking about consumer technologies, is to find ways of measuring these key influences, to create personal benchmarks for ourselves, to introduce gamification by setting goals that are achievable for us, creating that supporting environment around us, providing digital therapies rather than drugs as treatments, but also encouraging personal responsibility for our own health. And these are some of the enabling technologies, and they are the very same technologies that are disrupting society today. Exercise technologies. I've been using different forms of wearable devices, smartwatch, etc., for the last 10 years, and they've gone from simple fitness tracker devices that measure the number of steps that you do to nowadays almost medical grade devices which measure a whole lot of things, including blood pressure, body temperature, stress, and a whole range of other things. Mobile applications that go with this help us to provide dashboards that allow us to keep track of how we are doing with our sleep, with our diet, and also with the amount of exercise that we do. And these are some of the different device dashboards that I've used over the years, and it's worked. It's worked for me, and there are demonstrable results. In 1998, I looked like this on the left-hand side. In 2011, I was still a bit of a podgy person. There's a picture from doing a presentation in Kuala Lumpur. But in May 2013, a combination of circumstances, which I don't have time to go into, but nothing to do with ill health, led me to try and gamify my own health with technology. And you can see the transition between May 2013 and September 2013. And in that time, through the use of these devices and gamification, I lost 21 kilos. But I discovered over the period that although I still walk 5 miles every day, and exercise is critical to improved health and well-being and lifestyle, it's actually your diet that is the most important thing and has the biggest impact on both your weight and your health and well-being. And these are dashboards from the devices that I've used that allow me to, in fact, in this case, it's the Fitbit, that allow me to monitor the calorific value and the nutritional value of what I eat, and keep track to make sure that I'm not eating more than I'm burning in calories, but also the right kind of balance. And these devices increasingly give you advice on healthy diet. Epigenetics is another discipline which involves use of a DNA sample to create a personalized dietary recommendation and exercise recommendation. Originally, it developed for elite athletes. Moodoo is the name of the application. It's available to everyone. I've got it, and I've examined what my physical and mental age are, my DNA age compared to my physical age, and in majority of areas I'm actually younger according to my DNA profile than my physical age. So as far as digital health and diet and nutrition, there are many different tools which include AI and machine learning, which will increasingly allow us to be able to personalize the type of food we eat, the amount we eat, whether it's using delivery services or whether it's pre-cooked meals, and we will get feedback from the effectiveness of this from biometric data collected from wearable devices. Hydration technologies. There are devices which give us little nudges to prompt us to develop new habits. I try to drink 8 glasses of water a day, and I keep a track of my hydration. I also actively measure my sleep, It's very noticeable that my sleep was dramatically affected by going away on holiday in a negative way, I have to say. And also my heart rate and a whole range of other medical factors were influenced partly by the fact the stress of being away on holiday and driving on the wrong side of the road, but also by the fact that I don't normally drink alcohol, but in the evenings I tended to have a glass of alcohol or beer, and my resting pulse rate went up significantly from around 51 resting pulse rate to 60 by the time I got home. It's now dropping back down again now that I'm not consuming alcohol. There are stress management technologies available on mobile devices and that allow us to create personal benchmarks and goals and help us to change lifestyle habits. But also we shouldn't neglect the fact that there are technologies in this society where people move away from home that connect families and communities and help with some of the issues of old age when it comes to mental well-being and loneliness. So healthy active aging, it is possible through the combination of technologies, not dependent on technologies, but lifestyle medicine practices to be able to increase your lifespan, but also have a much better quality of life. And technology can play a part in the way that I show on this slide. But it's lifestyle medicine that's key to preventative healthcare, in my opinion. But we've got to remember the behavior change is complex and it depends on our personalities and our socio-economic circumstances and situations. But these digital technologies are available to measure our key health influences, and they're increasingly affordable medical grade. And I think this will be very, very important in the future of sustainable healthcare. So what is the likely impact on healthcare professionals? What is it going to do to the careers of people going into healthcare? Well, one of the things that's going to happen, I believe, definitely, is that the role of a doctor and a lot of medical practitioners is going to shift from responsibility for cure to an increasing role and responsibility for prevention. So doctors, instead of people who cure things, will tend to become more and more coaches and mentors of lifestyle behaviors. Shift happens, and if you Google shift happens, you will come across some very interesting videos about how technology has changed life over the last half century or so. But these, I think, are some of the most important things that we are seeing now and we will see in future. There'll be a shift from drugs and pharmaceutical remedies to digital therapeutics, using technology to provide cures. There'll be a shift away from hospitals into care in the community. Certain roles, for example, radiologists, certain roles will be taken over by AI, or they will largely be done by AI with human beings taking over a slightly different role and responsibility. But I think there's going to be an increased emphasis on human relationship skills, empathy, and so on in healthcare. And I think patients are going to play an even more important role. I call them expert patients, but patients who have a medical condition are able to use technology to keep track of that condition will be increasingly supporting, advising doctors on what is likely to be the problem and what is the best solution. So the doctors will be arbiters and coaches and mentors. And I think for the nursing profession, it's going to be a fantastic opportunity for nurses to take over increased responsibilities through the support of some of the technologies that are available today. But we got to remember that although technology may help to improve the quality of life for older people and reduce the cost burden to public health, it doesn't do anything to address the potential of older people to contribute to society. And this picture tends to reflect a common view of older people in the golden age of retirement, having companionship, sharing time together in retirement. And that is all good. But a lot of older people, and I include myself in this, feel they've got an enormous amount to contribute to society still, and still burn to want to make that contribution. So here is a shout out for Voice, which Bournemouth University is a part, and also the National Innovation Centre for Ageing, who are leading the way, I think, in recognising the potential of older people to contribute to society and making some transformational changes. In the case of the National Innovation Centre for Ageing, I think they will be a global centre for excellence for gerontology and the use of technology for and by older people. I just want to show you this very briefly. This is a voice project which is run by the National Innovation Centre for Ageing. It's called Flip the Script, and it's about changing people's perception of older people. And there was an installation at the London Design Biennial in Somerset House last month, and I made a virtual tour of this. I'm not going to show you the virtual tour, but I'll just show you a video that I made to try and communicate what I see as one of the potential misconceptions about older people.
Do you see when you look at me? Do you see a young professional man, innovative and entrepreneurial? Do you see someone burning with ambition to make the world a better place? Do you see a voice of authority, someone worth listening to? Do you see someone you can work with or collaborate with to bring mutual benefits? Or do you see an old man in a young man's body wanting to change perceptions about aging? I am actually 74 years old and have chosen to lend my voice to this digital human. I am still that ambitious young man, passionate about the technology and its impact on the world we live in. It's time to flip the script.
So this Flip the Script was an installation at this design centre Millennial, which was really making the point that older people have got a lot to contribute to society. Well, that's enough tub thumping from me for today. So I'm now going to stop sharing my screen and be ready to answer any questions that you might have.
Oh, great. Thank you for that, David. There are a few questions that we've got posted up on the text chat. Debbie, do you want to get the first one?
Yep. I'm just trying to see how far it is up. Oops. Oh, yes. Well, we're very challenged by AI here, David. Could you just tell us a little bit, what are your thoughts about AI? Is it going to be a problem for us or a solution for us as we educate the next generation of health professionals?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's both a problem and a solution. It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. I think if AI is used responsibly, it has enormous potential to help with healthcare professionals and reduce some of the workload on doctors and healthcare practitioners in general. But the problem is that you know, we have this ingrained view of the role of doctors and nurses are people who fix things rather than things that prevent things. And I think in a way, COVID-19 has almost been a help in helping to make this transition to realize that technology can play a role, because what it has done is shifted. One of the things it's done is shifted care from hospital care to community care, and it's accelerated the use and functionality of technologies that allow people to have their health monitored at home and stay at home. But it can have negative effects, and if you're involved in education, you've got to remember that your students will use ChatGPT, and they may use it to write their research projects. So you've got to kind of balance the two.
Okay. The other thing with health is a lot of innovation requires us sharing data sets, looking at individuals when we're starting to look at personalization. So I'm wondering about privacy, and could you say anything to us a bit about, is blockchain a solution, or what ought to we be thinking about? So that's kind of a practical thing. And then my follow-up would be, are there any ethical issues?
Well, there are significant moral and ethical issues with data privacy and data collection. This is where I perhaps get a bit controversial. There's my belief is that we've reached a point where we really have to be able to collect information about the health of the population in order to inform healthcare practices and policies. And the challenge is how you ensure data privacy. That's one thing. The other thing is how you prevent this data being prejudicial to the people who are supplying it. So if you have a genetic disorder which makes you more likely to get cancer, you should not pay the price of that. You should have, in my opinion, everyone should have access to affordable healthcare. But I think we need to find ways of rewarding people who are willing to collect and share their own data to the benefit of healthcare knowledge and understanding and demographics. My solution would be to give everyone a validated and accredited wearable device capable of collecting reliable data. Give it to everyone who wants one and is willing to share the data from that device, on a kind of understanding that there will be complete privacy, there will be no use of the data to be prejudicial to them, but there will be rewards of some kind for sharing that data. And the immediate reward that I can think of, which ought, on the face of it, be an attraction, is that if you have this data collected, when something goes wrong with you, when you go to the doctor or you go to the hospital, they've got this record of how your health has changed. And so they're much more likely to be able to diagnose the problem and treat you far better than people who haven't got that data. So I believe it should be entirely voluntary. You should have the choice. But just like there was the initial contract with the NHS, which was a contract between citizens and the National Health Services that provided health care, there needs to be some sort of revision of that contract that basically says we will recognise anyone who contributes to our knowledge of healthcare and demographics. We will not prejudice people who don't volunteer to do this. However, in signing this contract, you have to realise that if you haven't got the data about yourself, it's going to be more risky and less effective and more time consuming. If something does go wrong with you, you're more likely not to have a good outcome because the doctor or the person treating you has got to acquire all of that data at an instant in time. It's not historic data. It doesn't show what's happened before. And so healthcare is not likely to be as good for people who don't volunteer, in my opinion.
Good point. Good point, David. Thank you for that. I know you're really big on gamification and game design for learning. Christina asked an interesting question. Would it be more impactful to engage in cooperative or competitive immersive activity? And this is with regarding an exercise in like an immersive type of environment.
The competition is not necessarily a bad thing, but this is why we need benchmarks. If you have benchmarks which are personalized in the first place, so if just one of the ideas that I had, again, this might be controversial, is that if everyone is given a wearable device and they're given the opportunity to wear it for a month, that will give an indication of their lifestyle behaviors, how much they exercise, and a number of clinical parameters. And if at the end of that month, with the collected data, you can assign them, if you like, an index of 100. So no matter how old you are, what situation you're in, what the measurements are, at that point in time, when you've worn it for a month, you get the same health index as everyone else. And so from that point onwards, you have an opportunity to try and improve that health index. It might be, lowering your resting pulse rate. It might be lowering your blood pressure. It might be doing more exercise. It might be reducing weight. But that health index, if it's personalized in that way, can provide, if you like, a competition within yourself to improve and see how you're improving on a regular basis. When it comes to competition between people, there was one project using wearables some years ago, and it involved a company called Activate Our Lives in the UK near Huntingdon, and what they did was they provided fitness trackers or health trackers to teams of scouts, Boy Scouts and Girl Guides. So they were in teams of 10, and so each team, however many steps they walked in a day, collectively, they showed on a chart, and the idea was to see the fastest, the group of 10 people who could make the journey from Northampton or Huntingdon, where I can't remember where the starting place was, to the birthplace of Baden-Powell. So all the steps were aggregated and they were shown on the map. So each team of scouts could see how they were comparing with the other group. So you got 10 people working together, feeling a collective responsibility to try and be the first to complete the journey and doing more steps every day. So that was, I think, a good example of gamification in a project to support healthcare.
So we've got a really interesting question from CMAB. Do we have any apps for behavioural consultancy or counselling and depression control management? A lot of people need affordable apps. And I think that's the other thing, isn't it? We need affordable, but also evidence-based. Do you have any kind of thoughts or comments about how you would start to think about approaching a question like that, David?
Well, it's a difficult one, but it is a recognised problem, and apps are. I would almost guarantee there are apps already available to do this, and what I would suggest is that if you go to the ORCHA website, ORCHA. ORCHA is the organisation who vets and validates mobile applications for healthcare. And they have libraries of applications to cover different things. The ones that I tend to use, if you're talking about virtual reality, and I know this is not available for everyone, but an application like TRIP, TRIPP, is one which really helps with stress management. And for the aging society, I recommend, again, it's a VR application, Alcove VR. Alcove as in space in a cupboard, Alcove VR, which was specifically designed to support some of the issues of the aging society. So what Alcove does is provide you with your own apartment, your own virtual apartment. You can put your own pictures and videos in, and it provides a space where you can watch movies, listen to music with your friends, wherever they are in the world. Their avatars come and join you, sit in the room with you, watching a movie with you. You can access books on health and stress management, including digital therapeutic devices which are designed to relax you. So those are a couple that I know of, and one I think that you can mark down as something for the future is Mindplay. This is a guy that I've known for many years. He specializes in biometrics of measuring brainwaves. So he measures your brainwaves with a sensor on your forehead, which is normally worn within like a sports headband. So you have this device on your head. It monitors your brain waves, and he's developed a range of applications where you can use your brain waves or your level of concentration and relaxation to control electronic devices, and so in a way it's aiming to use biometrics and feedback to give you more control over your stress management.
Brilliant. I think we probably need to start to finish there. There's just a few minutes. If anybody's got any questions or any last comments for David, because we're just aware, colleagues probably need to go off and teach, have lunch, get on with their days.
Yes, thank you very much again for the opportunity. I'm just looking through the chat now to see if there's anything.
I think we've covered quite a bit of it.
Yeah, I think you have, and it's encouraging to see so much chat activity in a webinar. It's not always the case.
And one thing that we've been discussing that we may send out to everyone, providing we have ethical permission, is a survey to get some feedback from everybody who have attended any of the webinars. So please do keep an eye out for that, and we'll try to see what worked and what didn't, what things we might be interested in the future.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely amazing. If you're still online and you'd like to just maybe take your mic off mute, I thought we might do a virtual round of applause for David as a thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for your comments, your kind comments. I have been recording my presentation in my virtual auditorium, so I will be posting that in some form or other once I've edited it. But thank you once again. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm happy that I got through it after my holiday. Yes. You probably can't see it, but my right eye is very bloodshot, and this happened. It came during the holiday, and I think part of it was due to increased blood pressure with my front seat passenger, giving me contradictory directions all the time. But yeah, anyway, it seems to be healing up now. But anyway, thank you, Debbie, thank you, Skip. Thank you, Linda, Christina, Angela, for joining today, and thank you for all your kind comments. And please do keep in touch.
A huge amount of interest. Thank you very, very much.
And we want to thank everyone in the audience as well. Please do visit the link to our simulation-based website that we now have available at Bournemouth University's website, and stay in touch, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity, David, to work with you in the future again.
Brilliant.
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.